Hello everybody. In today's edition of Writing Notes, I'm going to be talking to you guys about composing for digital spaces. So this is a pretty broad subject, obviously, because there's a ton of different ways in which we write digitally. We write emails, we write blog posts, we write Facebook posts, we write Twitter posts, we write, did I say emails? I don't know if I said emails or not. But we write and we create in all of these different media online, all of these different modes, different ways of composing, different channels for composing and things like this. So to a certain extent, it's very difficult to say, here are the overall rules for digital composition. But there's some general guidelines that you want to be thinking about when you're writing in digital spaces. So the first thing that I would say when you're getting ready to write electronically, you want to think about how we read digitally. So what does that mean? Well, when we're reading digitally, when we're reading something online, whether it's a Vox article or a Slate article, whether it's Twitter feed, whether it's Facebook, whatever it is, we tend to skim. So this is one thing that we want to be aware of as writers in digital environments. And I'll talk more through all of these in a little bit, but we tend to skim. We tend to read non-linearly. So we tend to read and then follow hyperlinks or go watch videos or do other things and then maybe come back. We tend to skip back and forth a lot more than we do when we're reading hard copies of something. Partially this is because it's fairly easy to scroll up and down and things like this. And then we tend to read very much at a surface level. We don't tend to read long paragraphs, things like this. We don't tend to read dense areas of text. So these are some of the things that you want to keep in mind as you're composing for digital spaces, because the way that we read digitally impacts the way that you want to write digitally. Because one of the goals is to maximize the impact of your written text or of your communication by specifically appealing to the kinds of things that work for digital readers. So, what are some of these things? Well, typically you want fairly short paragraphs, because again, online we don't tend to read long, dense paragraphs. We tend to read short paragraphs, and we tend to try and sort of draw the soundbite of information out of them. There are major critiques of soundbite politics, soundbite culture, and things like this. This sort of notion that, like, we can reduce everything to just a few words. And those are legitimate critiques, but as writers we want to be aware that this is part of the way in which digital readers consume media. So I would say you're looking generally at paragraphs, ideally about 25 to 35 words, so very, very short, maybe 2 sentences. What else do you want to be aware of? Well, you want to think about nonlinear reading structures. So you may incorporate hyperlinks, you may incorporate videos, you may incorporate images, and all of these are actually part of the aesthetics of online composition as well. Images, videos, multimedia of different kinds. This is a way of keeping readers engaged, because especially when we're reading online, we expect to have imagery, we expect to have stuff that we can see beyond just the words. And that's a way of hooking the reader back in, whether it's charts, whether it's pictures, whether it's video, whatever it is. And then hyperlinks serve 2 important functions. One is going to be that these connect your reader to relevant information. Oftentimes, especially in fairly short compositions, we don't have time to sort of establish the groundwork of every point that we want to make. And typically when we're writing for most digital spaces, we're not properly citing our sources through, say, MLA or APA or Chicago-style citations. And so the hyperlink works as a kind of shorthand citation because it takes us directly to that source. So that's one way that hyperlinks are beneficial, is that they substantiate your evidence and they provide additional resources for people who want to know more about the subject matter you're writing about. The other way is that hyperlinks are beneficial, or the other way that maybe not necessarily beneficial, but the way that they shape our digital composition is that, again, readers read in a nonlinear fashion online. So readers are likely to follow links and things like that, and by putting those links in yourself, you have more control over what links they're likely to click on, as opposed to, say, the little advertisement in the sidebar or something like that. So that's one thing that you want to be aware of, is the use of hyperlinks, the use of images, videos, multimedia, etc., etc. Short paragraphs, again. Other things that you want to be thinking about, because we know that readers tend to skim when they're reading digitally, you want to try and get important information in first lines of paragraphs and in the early portion of sections. And I'd recommend a lot of times using section breaks, section headers, things like that when you're writing online, particularly if you're composing something fairly lengthy, because again, that's going to help break up that text and make it a little more manageable for readers online. And within each of those sections, if you can give us the key ideas right up at the front, you're more likely to effectively convey that information to your readers. So those are the things that you want to start being aware of, is front load the information as much as possible to make sure that readers get your most important points. Try and be fairly concise and clear as well. Always be clear in your writing if you can, but try and be very concise because readers aren't going to wade through dense paragraphs. Make use of the multimedia options and the digital options given to you by an online format. So again, hyperlinks, images, videos, stuff like this. And you want to think about, if you have control over this, you want to think about the aesthetics of your channel or the mode that you're writing in. And a lot of times you're not going to have much control over this. You can't, in a very minimal way, you can customize things like how your Facebook page looks or how your Twitter feed looks. But for the most part, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, these other services have a set way that things look. But if you're blogging or something like that, you tend to have a lot more control. If you're creating your own website, you have a lot more control over the design you can incorporate. And so you want to be thinking about what's aesthetically pleasing, what's relevant, and what's interconnected. Thanks.